Today, something unimaginable happened in the cold void of space. An interstellar object named 3I/ATLS split perfectly in two along a cut so flawless it's chilling. One half vanished without a trace, and the remaining half began transmitting a signal aimed directly at Earth, as if it were trying to tell us something. Space agencies are calling this the most mysterious phenomenon ever recorded in the history of space exploration. And by the end of this video, you'll understand why every scientist on the planet stood frozen in front of their screens. 3I/ATLS may not just be a natural object, it may be a system, possibly even a machine that is now being activated. Stay with me, because what happens next will make you rethink humanity's entire place in the universe. If this mystery has you hooked and you want to keep diving into the most shocking cosmic stories, hit that like button so the universe knows you're listening. You see, I've been through a lot of weird stuff in my life, from Starship explosions at Boca Chica to telemetry feeds spitting out numbers that even SpaceX's best engineers just stared at in silence. I'm used to surprises. I'm used to chaos. But what I'm about to tell you right now, it's on a completely different level. 32 hours ago, 3I/ATLS, the interstellar object the whole world has been watching, did something no physics textbook ever prepared us for. It split perfectly in half, not exploded, not shattered into fragments, not torn apart by gravity or collision. It split cleanly, precisely, as if someone out there hit a split button. The cut was so smooth that if I brought it into a Tesla design room, the engineers would swear it was done by an industrial robot. And then the strangest part happened. One half, Object B, vanished completely. No signal, no light reflection, no gravitational ripple, like it was erased from the universe. Every telescope, every deep space radar, every Starlink satellite we have, everything lost it at the exact same instant. But the other half, Object A, started talking. And it wasn't random noise. It wasn't background static. It was structured, rhythmic, deliberate signal, aimed straight at Earth. Imagine this. An interstellar object splits like a machine. One half disappears. The other half turns, looks right at your planet, and starts transmitting. That's no longer astronomy. That's a reminder that something is actively doing things. When you've looked at data from thousands of rocket launches, you know instantly what's natural and what has intent. This right now is the discovery that has NASA, ESA, and every observatory on Earth asking the question we never wanted to face: are we being watched? That's only the beginning. If you want to know what happens next, stay with me. I got the first alert while I was in Hawthorne, in the middle of back-to-back meetings about Starship and SpaceX's new orbital tracking system. The funny thing is, earlier that day I was joking with the engineers that if Starlink occasionally throws a few weird data packets our way, no big deal. Every big system has its glitches. Then Mission Control pulled me into a side room and put a Deep Space Network log in front of me, cross-verified by second-gen Starlink antenna arrays. You know that feeling, the moment you look at the numbers and realize everything you thought you understood about how objects move through space no longer applies? That was the moment. I've seen plenty of anomalies testing Raptor engines, sometimes a thrust spike out of nowhere, sometimes telemetry jittering like it's sending Morse code, but nothing ever looked like what was on the screen that day. Even if it sounds dramatic, I've seen this before, and believe me, it never means something simple. The first log showed 3I/ATLS cruising normally, just like the weeks before, then suddenly accelerating, not a little, not from gravity. Pure acceleration with no physical reason whatsoever. What caught my eye wasn't the speed. It was the direction of the acceleration. Normally, and this is basic textbook astronomy, an object slows down as it moves away from the sun. Energy input drops, gravitational pull weakens, it decelerates. High school physics, but 3I/ATLS did the opposite. The farther it got from the sun, the faster it went. And every antenna from DSN to SpaceX ground stations confirmed the same velocity curve, acceleration on a scale no model predicted. If it were a rocket, I'd ask, what fuel is it burning? Where's the exhaust plume? If it were one of our probes, I'd check the ion thruster logs. But 3I/ATLS had none of that. No ion trail, no heat signature, no reaction mass, no tail, no exhaust of any kind. Nothing to explain the thrust. Imagine watching a ship accelerate with no engine, a car moving with no wheels, a flame burning with no oxygen. Every tracking system recorded the same thing. No reaction mass detected. What does that mean? It means in all the data we collected, there was nothing showing 3I/ATLS was being pushed by any natural or man-made mechanism we understand. At that point, teams from NASA, Caltech, Harvard, and SpaceX started running simulations. They threw in every variable possible: solar radiation pressure, photon pressure, interplanetary magnetic fields, plasma interactions, even the hypothesis that 3I/ATLS was a hollow shell with compressed gas inside. Every model collapsed. The simulations looked perfect on paper, but the real data didn't match. Moment that doesn't fit any known equation. That's what my chief telemetry engineer said, staring at the third log. A moment that doesn't fit any equation humanity has ever written. A moment that forces you to admit you're looking at something that doesn't obey the physics we're used to. And that was before it split in half, before one half vanished, before the remaining half looked straight at Earth and started transmitting. Just hours after we detected that paradoxical acceleration, the next event hit. And if you've ever read thousands of lines of telemetry like I have, this will give you goosebumps. SpaceX, NASA, and European antenna networks started picking up a series of energy pulses coming from the core of 3I/ATLS. At first, everyone thought it was just cosmic noise, the kind any deep space instrument runs into. But as stations filtered the signals, synced clocks, and overlaid the data, the truth came into focus so sharply that nobody in the control room dared speak. The pulses repeated every 11 minutes, not roughly 11 minutes, exactly 11 minutes, down to the nanosecond. Do you understand what that means? No natural phenomenon we know of, from pulsars to magnetars to particle decay, can hold timing that tight. Pulsars drift microseconds. The 3I/ATLS, zero error across 16 consecutive cycles, zero. Trust me, our timing systems never line up that perfectly unless something is deliberately controlling it. When the analysis team pulled up the first waveform on screen, I immediately noticed how clean it was. No noise, no distortion, no weird decay. The waveform looked like something you generate in a lab with a high-end signal generator, not from an object screaming through deep space at interstellar velocity, near-perfect frequency stability, constant amplitude, deliberately repeating harmonic structure, zero signs of natural origin. One of the NASA engineers looked at the plot and just said 3 words. This is engineered. I didn't reply, but inside I completely agreed. If you've sat through hundreds of acoustic signal or vectored thrust control simulations like I have, you recognize it instantly. Natural processes don't hit nanosecond precision. Machines do. That's the kind of precision you only see in high-tech systems designed, not formed by random nature. Of course, the scientific community immediately split into 2 camps. One side argued this could be a completely new physical phenomenon, some kind of energy reaction never observed before, emerging from the interstellar object's core. Sounds reasonable, at least for those who still want to believe the universe works in ways we can explain. But the other side, including remote sensing experts, quantum waveform specialists, and the SpaceX signal engineering team, went the opposite direction. This is artificial. Its origin matches no recorded natural process in astronomical history. The frequency, the cycle, the amplitude all point to a form of message. Personally, someone who has looked at thousands of different signals, from engine noise to stray radio waves leaking off Starlink, I lean hard toward intentional. You don't need to be Einstein to see it. And most importantly, it repeats so perfectly that I double-checked our atomic clocks to make sure our own equipment hadn't been hacked. It hadn't. So the question is no longer, is this natural? The real question is, if this is a signal, who is it for? Why, the exact moment one half disappears, does the remaining half start broadcasting a perfectly structured message? And then, while we were still struggling to make sense of that 11-minute pulse train, 3I/ATLAs did the next thing, something even the most optimistic people in the room couldn't accept as natural. In just 2 hours, the entire object began changing shape. I'm not talking about surface heating or material compression. I'm talking about deliberate, smooth, continuous transformation, like watching an alien machine reconfigure itself. At first, the change was subtle, just a tiny distortion in the optical profile, a slightly off reflection, something you could miss if you weren't watching millisecond by millisecond. But after 15 minutes, every observatory confirmed the same thing. 3I/ATLAs was elongating. Spectrographic outlines showed it shifting from spherical to ellipsoidal, then to cylindrical, smoothly, with proportions so perfect, it felt like watching a CAD model animate instead of an interstellar object hurtling millions of kilometers per hour. And what unsettled me the most wasn't that it changed shape, it was how it did it. No cracking, no debris, no heat bloom, no signs of friction or material elasticity. If anything made of metal, rock, carbon, or any compound humans know was deformed like that in 2 hours, it would melt or explode from internal stress. I can say that with the confidence of someone who's watched every kind of material behave under the insane conditions of rocketry. And I said it right there in the control room. No material we know could do that without melting. One of the engineers gave a nervous laugh and said, if Starship could shapeshift like that, we'd have saved billions. I laughed for about a second because ATLS wasn't doing it to look prettier. The rate of change was constant. The deformation speed held a fixed gradient, like a boot up or mode shift sequence. Every 11 minutes a pulse, then the object reshaped at exactly the right pace until the cycle completed. After 2 hours, when ATLS had fully transitioned into a perfect cylinder, what happened next made the entire room go dead silent. The 11-minute pulse train, the steady rhythm we'd been tracking for a full day, abruptly stopped, not faded, not drifted into noise, stopped cold. Every instrument worldwide showed the same flat line, no more waves, no echo, no energy coming from the core. This is the kind of silence I don't like. The kind of silence when software just shut off, or a system switched to a protocol you haven't seen yet, something turned off, or shifted modes. When an interstellar object has just finished reconfiguring itself and then goes completely silent, it's preparing for something else. Something all of us in that room could feel, but nobody had the guts to say out loud. What every physics textbook, every astronomical model, every standard of orbital mechanics swore was impossible, happened right in front of us, clean, neat, and precise enough to leave the entire control room speechless. 3I/ATLS split in two, not an explosion, not thermal disintegration, no internal pressure shattering the structure, no gas venting, no dust, no debris, no sign of destruction whatsoever. Instead, the object opened along the exact cylindrical axis it had just morphed into, like someone separated it with a perfectly calibrated laser cutter. The cut line was so smooth that even if you magnified it 10,000 times, you still wouldn't see a single deviation. I've used Tesla welding robots to make micromatter perfect seams, and even that tech doesn't come close to how clean ATLS's split was. The two halves, later named Object A and Object B, drifted apart at an unbelievably slow controlled rate, as if governed by a soft separation algorithm, instead of chaotic physical forces. And what truly took my breath away, the two halves were identical down to the last detail. No material deformation, no jagged edges, no floating shards. It looked like an object designed to separate, not a natural body being broken. Object A and Object B initially drifted apart along a perfectly balanced vector like two modules of a spacecraft executing a pre-programmed maneuver. But then, the moment they reached stable separation distance, the next insane thing happened. Object B executed a perfect 90-degree turn, no curved trajectory, no gravitational deflection, a razor-sharp right-angle turn like a line drawn with a ruler on a blueprint. You have to understand this. No natural object in the universe, no comet, no asteroid, no interstellar dust can corner like a controlled UAV. That turn was a signature of intelligence. There's no other way to put it. After the turn, Object B accelerated within seconds to a velocity far beyond any initial prediction, and then it vanished. Not faded out, not we lost the signal, vanished from every tracking system simultaneously. Optical gone, infrared gone, radio gone, radar cross-section gone, gravitational signature 0, deep space network, Arecibo legacy arrays, Starlink sensor grid, every single one reported the same message, no detectable object. I stood in front of the screens and instantly knew what that meant. Telemetry doesn't disappear like that. Not when you have hundreds of independent tracking systems, not when the object is kilometers across, not when it just pulled a maneuver only vectored thrust technology can do. If every sensor on Earth simultaneously can't see something like that, there's only one possibility: it chose to disappear, or more accurately, it chose to hide. If something can hide from all our sensors, I whispered to the engineers next to me, then it's not running away, it's watching. And as if to confirm it, minutes after Object B vanished, the most sensitive gravitational wave detectors recorded a tiny ripple, so faint only humanity's best instruments could feel it. A tremor in space-time, coming from the empty point where Object B had been. A faint flicker of space, like a shadow moving. None of us wanted to be the first to say the obvious. Object B hadn't vanished. It had simply gone somewhere we couldn't see. When Object B disappeared, we thought the scariest part was over. We were wrong, completely wrong. Just 30 minutes later, Object A began broadcasting a brand new kind of signal. Unlike the previous 11-minute pulse train, this signal wasn't regular in time. It was regular in mathematical structure. When we ran the first analysis, I almost laughed in disbelief. It was the sequence of prime numbers 2, 3, 5, 7, 11, 13, 17, each pulse distinct pulse length increasing exactly according to the prime number sequence. You have to understand, prime numbers are the most basic language of intelligence. Humans use them to send messages into space, especially on the Voyager Golden Record. And what gave me chills wasn't that we were hearing primes. It was that I instantly recognized we did the exact same thing with Voyager, except this time we're the ones receiving it. One of the SpaceX engineers next to me whispered, "Is it trying to say something?" But no, what was far more terrifying was the direction of the signal. It wasn't broadcasting randomly. It wasn't beaming into deep space. It was aimed directly at the coordinates where Object B had vanished. When we overlaid the signal vector on the 3D map, the beam converged exactly on the empty point we just lost, not off by a fraction of a degree, no scatter. If you looked at it, you'd swear Object A was calling Object B back, like two modules of a system pinging each other to sync status. The transmission lasted exactly 31 minutes. Each pulse a prime, each pause a separator, no amplitude change, no structural drift, not a single nanosecond of error. Humans call this artificial signal, but in reality, it far surpasses any artificial standard we've ever produced. Then, like a door slamming shut in perfect silence, the signal stopped, not faded, not tapered off, cut off instantly as if someone in the dark flipped a switch. The feeling in that moment is hard to describe. I've heard dozens of rocket engines cut off abruptly, sensor failure, valve failure, software glitch, and every time I knew, you know that feeling when your rocket goes silent right before something big happens? Yeah, that's what this felt like. The room was left with only server fans and people breathing hard, trying to process what just happened. Object A went still. No heat, no abnormal reflection, no more emissions. Absolute silence, the kind that makes you want to step back even though it's hundreds of millions of miles away. After exactly 4 minutes 27 seconds, yes, we were counting every second, ESA and NASA, gravitational wave detectors triggered simultaneously. A tiny ripple appeared in the fabric of space-time, not at Object A's position, from where Object B had vanished. When we calculated the displacement vector, it all pointed to one unmistakable conclusion. Object B was moving back into the inner solar system, and its heading wasn't upward, wasn't outward, wasn't back the way it came. It was descending toward us. Earth had just become the convergence point of something no one dared name. In that moment, we understood the two halves of 3 I/A tell us weren't fragments. They were components of a system now coming online. Something had been activated, something was returning, something was heading straight for Earth. The first gravitational wave was just a whisper. But hours later, Object B's return signal became so clear no one could deny it anymore. Deep Space Network, Arecibo relay arrays, and Starlink Phase 2 sensor grid all recorded the same data. Object B had reappeared, now just over 2 AU from Earth, much closer than its original position, and most importantly, it was accelerating on a direct intercept course with our orbit. Its velocity wasn't increasing randomly. Every velocity vector, every tiny course correction was so precise, it left SpaceX orbit controllers speechless. I've tweaked thousands of rocket trajectories, fine-tuned paths to thousands of a degree, and I can tell you straight, Object B's level of precision is not something nature produces. Nature fluctuates. Nature has noise. But Object B, it moved like it was reading from a pre-programmed flight plan. And when we cross-referenced that data with Object A's status, what sent chills down my spine appeared instantly. Both were rotating on the same axis. Object A, still stationary at its original position, began a slow spin. Object B, millions of kilometers away, spun at exactly the same frequency, same rate, same orientation. When we overlaid the two spin axes on the 3D map, Object A's axis and Object B's axis converged into one single line, a straight line, and that line lay directly along Earth's orbital path. You have to understand in celestial mechanics, two objects millions of kilometers apart do not spontaneously synchronize rotation unless there's a force, a system, or an intent. NASA and ESA issued no statements, no press conferences, no updates. All the scientific channels we usually get data from went strangely silent, not because they weren't seeing this, because they didn't want to say it. And then, as Object B closed in, the next phenomenon hit Earth itself. Global GPS began losing accuracy by 5 meters, then climbing to 11 meters. Migratory birds abruptly changed heading, as if hit by a powerful magnetic field. Ship compasses reported drifts of 0.9 to 1.3 degrees. Several satellites recorded Earth's magnetosphere oscillating lightly on a cycle that perfectly matched the rotation of Object A and Object B. This was no longer astronomy. This was direct interaction. This was the side effect of an energy field we never predicted. This isn't random. This is calibration. The two halves of 3 I/ATLS, A and B, weren't just spinning, they were synchronizing. Every rotation of A was a signal. Every vector change of B was a response. It was all happening like two parts of a gigantic machine powering up after a very long sleep. I saw it clearly. They were no longer separate objects. They were becoming one system, a system with Earth directly in its active radius. When ground magnetometer stations sent back sequences matching the synchronized spin of the two halves, someone in the control room whispered, "They're finding the frequency to lock onto something." That's when everything stepped into a completely different level. Object A, still motionless millions of kilometers away, began glowing from the inside, not reflected light, not thermal radiation, a deep pulsing glow, as if an energy core had been switched on, beating in perfect time with Object B's rotation. Several SpaceX engineers told me it looked exactly like a reactor warming up, and trust me, I've seen every kind of engine from Raptor to Merlin. That light was not from a natural reaction. Meanwhile, Object B, now closing on Earth orbit, suddenly released its first energy burst. Not a single burst. Multiple bursts across the spectrum. Gamma, X-ray, radio, even low-frequency waves only magnetometers could catch. Every burst hit Earth exactly on the rotation cycle of the two halves. Can you imagine? An interstellar object firing synchronized energy pulses with another object, and Earth is just the point lying on their interference pattern. When the first bursts hit the ionosphere, 3 Starlink satellites instantly dropped out. A Japanese weather satellite went completely dark. 2 European military satellites rebooted, as if someone remotely hit the reset button. And here's what made the hair on my neck stand up. Every satellite lost signal at the exact moment the burst passed through the atmosphere, not half a second early or late. That's not coincidence. That's precision. A kind of precision we don't make. I ran down to SpaceX's main mission control in Hawthorne, and right then the final log from Object B came in from a Texas ground station. Just one line, Object B holding position, awaiting instructions, and the timeline stopped. No further data, no response. Object B hung motionless, as if it had just received a command we didn't hear. As an engineer, I understood that line deeper than anyone. In engineering, when a system says awaiting instructions, it means it's ready. The system only waits for orders when it has finished booting up. What does that mean when the system is an interstellar object synchronized with its other half, both axes locked onto Earth? The entire NASA, ESA, and SpaceX teams knew this is no longer a physical phenomenon. This is a sequence of behavior, and behavior always has purpose. When we projected the spin vectors of Object A and Object B onto the 3D model for the first time, we saw what might be the most terrifying image any orbital tracking system has ever recorded. The two halves were rotating directly toward each other, not parallel, not independently, directly like 2 gears hunting for the exact spot to mesh. And as their spin axes began to align on the same angle, Earth's magnetic field fluctuated harder than ever recorded. Compasses in South Africa swung 3 degrees off. GPS in North America drifted 22 meters. European HF radio was completely jammed by standing waves for 14 straight seconds. Migratory birds in Australia turned en masse. The entire planet felt the presence of a force we have no name for. We ran simulations. No model reproduced the pattern. And in that moment, I knew I had to say what we'd all been avoiding. We're not alone. And whatever's happening, we're part of the equation now. The two halves of 3I/ATLAs aren't just active. They're activating. They're communicating. They're aligning. Every rotation stronger than the last. Every burst from B making A glow brighter. The energy field between them thickening. None of us have answers. None of us know what happens next. Thank you for sticking with me to the end. If you want to keep decoding the next mysteries with me, subscribe to the channel right now. See you in the next video where we'll go even deeper into what's waiting for humanity out there.